Hello, my legal eagles. This is live from, well, wherever your friendly neighborhood TechnoCat is, and for once, that's actually at home. Welcome to the first ever TechnoCat Studios episode, broadcasting from, well, Austin, Texas. Get used to the sign behind me, because this year I'm going to bring you more frequent conversations from wherever I am, even if that's one of the 100 days a year I'm actually at home. And I could not ask for a better first in-studio guest than Brian Kelley. He is the VP of product for a company called CloudNine. And if you don't know who they are, well, by the end of this, you will. Brian spent years deep in the weeds in eDiscovery, product development, translating real-world legal and data challenges into practical, scalable solutions. He brings a rare mix of technical depth, product instinct, and on-the-ground understanding of how legal teams actually work. So without further ado, let's get into this. Brian, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Kat. Look forward to it.
Oh, awesome. Well, I gave you the Cat GPT version of who Brian is, but Brian, do you want to tell my audience, maybe who are meeting you for the first time, who the heck are you and what is the CloudNine?
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think you did a great job, making me sound great, but I'll try to, fill in the gaps there. So I've been with CloudNine for about 13 years. I started kind of on the solutions consultant side of it, the house, and now I work both with our development, our product team, building out our, product solutions. If you're not familiar with CloudNine, we've been around for a while. We started in the early 2000s, kind of assisting and building out, helping LSPs across the country with a lot of scanning projects back in the day, and then kind of transitioned in more of the review and SaaS review application components. And then about 7 years ago, we actually purchased both concordance and law pre-discovery from LexisNexis, and have been managing those products and still continuously updating those applications. So for us, we've kind of have a little bit of our hands both in the cloud and both on on-prem solutions as well.
Well, that's kind of crazy. So for some of my OG audience members, like if they don't know who CloudNine is, they probably worked with you for the early part of their career and didn't even realize it. And now you're doing some pretty cool stuff too. As a guy sort of in product at the intersection of law and tech, you've been kind of building and shaping all the cool stuff with CloudNine. What gets your gears going? What is most exciting that you guys are doing today? Because I'd imagine you guys have a couple tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah, no, we're very excited. Later this year, we're going to actually be converting our SaaS-based review application. It's nicely named CloudNine Review, so you definitely know what it's called. That's been a SaaS application for basically the last 20 years. But what we've had is a huge demand. A lot of other applications that were available to you that were on-prem are going away or no longer supported. And because of that, we've seen a really renewed interest to control cost and manage the processes, in-house. So you have some of the data security, concerns alleviated. You have the ability to kind of manage your volumes. So you're not, having unexpected billing concerns and things like that. So we're taking our SaaS-based review application, we're bringing that down to be an on-prem based review application. It is powered by law processing. So you're getting, the historic capabilities of law with 25 plus years of processing capabilities, over 4,800 file types that we support within that processing. And we're also bringing in a lot of our modern data support. So we're able to handle both text message communications. We're able to handle, chat-based communications like WhatsApp and WeChat. And we're able to handle those corporate-based communications like Teams and Slack directly within the application as well. So we're really excited about, that particular release. It's been a big request and a big need for a lot of customers as some of the other products in the market are transitioning away from on-prem solutions.
Well, you had me at freedom of choice, because I think that anyone saying you have to fit your square peg process into my round hole is not planning a winning approach. Take a step back though. So you mentioned something that I've been talking a lot about, modern data. Can you talk to me a little bit about how modern data sources might be different than, say, eDiscovery in email or in more traditional documents? I think a lot of people have heard the term modern data sources, and they just may not understand what it is and why it matters that you have someone who's really good at handling those atypical data types.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, modern data is, here a lot of times, people say, hey, don't communicate via email, right? We've gotten to the point where email is, basically discovery, right? It is really what people, avoid trying to communicate, problems and issues and things like that. And the problem is they simply just transition away from email, and they won't send something bad in email, but they will definitely send it in their Slack or their Teams, or they'll text someone about, hey, this major problem that we had, and just kind of, spill the tea, as they like to say, within those messages.
Well, JPMC or one of the big banks, I don't remember which one, got fined $100 million for off third-party data use of, I guess, modern data sources communication, off-channel communication. So it can be a big deal, especially in highly regulated industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, especially if you're, involving those communications about personal information where that's getting out, outside of those secure channels, or you're using your own devices, those bring your own device organizations. That's a big challenge for them as well, because those organizations aren't really even the custodial holders of those devices either.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. But the big thing we do there is we actually bring in messages. So instead of creating default 24-hour threads, we actually bring those messages in as individual text messages across devices. And that way we can actually hash the messages on an individual basis, and we can deduplicate across devices. We've had, some cases where we've had over 60 custodians' devices, they get into the hundreds and almost 200 devices across 60 custodians. And the problem is a lot of times they're big group communications, right? And when you get into those communications, a lot of times there's a bunch of irrelevancy within those conversations. Me and you may have a conversation at the beginning of the day about us, client A, and then we talk about our friends and family, and then we talk about another client, and then we go back to client A. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't really want to produce this entire thread, so I do a bunch of redactions. Because we do store it on a message level, we do display it in 24-hour thread, but you can pick and choose the messages within that, and you can actually go directly from production in that process. So it makes the effort of actually getting those messages out a lot easier. And because we have it on a message level, we also get message level metadata. So it's really defensible. You just create a priv log like you do with email and say, hey, these are the 20 messages in this conversation that we're not producing. And boom, you got a nice defensible priv log or withheld log that you can provide.
I love that. I mean, for my audience, I don't know how many of you are on like that never-ending group text, right? With 87 messages. There've been a couple times I've come back from like an hour-long walk. I'm like, who replied 187 times? Is any of it relevant? And if I was having to parse through that for discovery, I would not want to be producing the kitty cat memes along with the possible exfiltration of client data or whatever the case is. That's really awesome. So it's interesting. It sounds like the approach that you have to processing the modern data is also somewhat unique to CloudNine. I know we were doing our prep call, you mentioned something about your walled processing approach and some of the unique ways that you're trying to, I guess, capture, parse, and make data more searchable. I mean, talk me through it a little bit. I'm Cat 1 using it. That may not be the appropriate way to break it down, but if you can, from a product-centric way, kind of break down what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So we handle data intakes in a few different ways. Obviously, with the different modern data sources, they all have their own different export profiles. For example, a lot of times collections are done with Cellbrite. It's still the vast majority of the collection sources that we see. But there's a bunch of others. We have some partnerships with some others like Oxygen and some of the other providers out there as well. But we can actually directly intake from a UFDR. So we'll actually point to the UFDR, you select your time frame that you want to ingest in, you select your data source formats, and we'll directly extract those messages and load it in for you. If you get some exports from things like Oxygen or some of the other collection sources on the market there as well, we can actually intake directly from the load file formats or export profiles that they have, whether that's a DAT or a CSV or whatever it may be. And we will actually create records and link all the attachments, make the 24-hour threads as part of that ingestion process there as well. So it really makes the workflow to get the data in pretty easily. And then things like Slack and Teams, obviously Slack is typically the JSON export profile. We can handle those as well. And then Teams, we see a few different formats, mostly PSTs. We basically intake that as in the PST format, and then we basically run the hashing workflows against that to create those 24-hour threads and links and things like that.
All right, that's great. So like the TLDR then you got my audience is anyone from like the legal Luddite to the way in the weeds on AI is, regardless of the data source, you've got a way on the back end to kind of organize and parse and capture the data so that it is a little bit more streamlined, a little bit easier of a process, a lot less manual of a headache for the people that are working with you. Is that a fair breakdown?
That is super fair. And if you really don't want to handle any of it, we do have a services team, of course, that can help you do all the collection all the way to it. So you don't even have to worry about it. You just tell us what you need.
See, now you're speaking my language. I love it. So it's really interesting. So I guess like two of the big takeaways are like, no matter how weird the data, you guys are a great resource, whether it's self-serve or working full serve with you. And then you're really leaning into freedom of choice, being able to kind of deploy your partnership however it makes sense for your organization. There's a big push towards like data repatriation and increased control over where your data goes today. And so increasing that flexibility is something that a lot of folks are looking for. It's really, really exciting. Did I miss anything? I feel like those were the big super secret things you wanted to talk about, but you never do know. If there's anything else that catches your eye, stop me. The other thing I wanted to, I guess, dig into a little bit is you've been around the block for a while. You've been, of course, with CloudNine for a good bit on the product side at the intersection of kind of all these challenges that people are facing. What do you think is your superpower? What do you think for you, if someone's working with Brian Kelley, right, or interacting with the products you're developing, kind of what's the secret sauce that you bring to the table?
Yeah, my goal has always been to really, get people more involved within the solutions, right? Whether that be our SaaS-based review application, whether that's going to be our on-prem review application, whether they're the people who are actually, doing the hard work of processing the data and doing the data management processes there. What we really want to do, or what I really want to do, is get people involved in it. We work with a variety of different clients, some very, very sophisticated clients, like probably a lot of people listening to this call today. But you guys probably also have some people inside your organizations that are just, I won't call them Luddites, but they're the ones who struggle with it. They really lean on other people to try to do that. They feel scared of the technology itself, and they don't want to get involved in that process. So my big goal is to get people involved and, make them understand how to use the solutions, and at least in a base level, so they feel comfortable enough that they can get through the process themselves. Lean on other people when they need it, but they're not to a point where they're just stuck without help and not understanding the base level usage of it. So I both try to do that from just the in-person interactions, communicating with the individuals and things like that. But for my role as a product lead, we really try to do that with inside of Cloud9 as well, where we build our solutions, we build our applications so that they're easy to use and they feel comfortable to the actual users themselves. Getting involved is not a really complicated certification process in order just to do basic functionality in the application at all.
Oof, I love that. I feel like when I started in eDiscovery back in 2006, because I was only 5, clearly. But when I started, it really was like there was a barrier of entry to be touching and interacting with the tech of a certain level of tech competence. And it's really nice to see kind of a democratization of, hey, even if you're not a tech attorney, but you have the need to work with tech, it's more accessible. You don't have to go it alone. You've got these service partners, or even just tools and technologies that are more designed with not the technophobes, but maybe someone who wouldn't call themselves a tech attorney in mind, so it's accessible. That's really exciting. So believe it or not, we are actually coming around the curve. These are a sprint and not a marathon. They go really fast. I feel like you probably feel like you blinked and you're like, what is she talking about? But before I wrap up, I always like to throw out one last question to people. So say someone is scrolling through LinkedIn and they come across this podcast for the first time, or they hear Brian Kelley for the first time, or Cloud9. What's your one mic drop moment, the one takeaway you want them to have from the last 13 minutes and 8 seconds they have spent with us?
Yeah, I just like to say, really what Cloud9 is trying to accomplish here is we want to give the customers the choice to, where they want to actually, work with inside the applications, whether they want to have a cloud solution with a heavy emphasis on service and solutions there, or whether they want something that's an on-prem, review application with full processing where they have full data control. They can manage the backends, they can access the data. They don't have to worry about, reaching out or having caps for data volumes, or running into situations where they, are dealing with conflict checks and things like that they have to deal with in those situations. They just have data certainty that they control the application, they control the process, and they control other workflows. So for Cloud9, unlike a lot of the other players in the industry that we're seeing, we really are focused on giving customers choice.
Oof, I love that. You had me at choice. When I ran the #1 litigation firm in the world, I was flustered that there wasn't a lot of other options out there, and it's exciting to see folks doubling down on that. So, if someone wants to get in touch with you, Brian, would they look for you on LinkedIn? And what's the best way for them to learn about Cloud9? What's the URL for your website?
Yeah, it's nice and easy. It's just cloud9.com to get in touch with the organization, and then you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, Brian Kelley. I went to LSU actually, so I'm not the former football coach. So if you see that, unfortunately that wasn't my gig, but you can definitely find me on LinkedIn there for Brian Kelley, and that's Kelley with an EY at the end.
Oh, I love it. Well, I Can't think of a better way to end than on Kelley on an EY and freedom of choice. So consider the mic drop. This has been your friendly neighborhood TechnoCat, and I've been thrilled to be on here with Brian Kelley. So stay tuned for more TechnoCat to come. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kat.